This is section 4.5b, where we are looking at addition and subtraction of unlike fractions. So unlike fractions have different denominators, and in order to add fractions or subtract fractions, they need a common denominator. So if we're going to add 1/6 and 3/4, I have a picture representation where 1/6 has been changed to the equivalent fraction 2/12, and 3/4 has been changed to the equivalent fraction 9/12, and then we can add 2/12 and 9/12 to get our 11/12, our sum. So our steps are going to be to identify what the least common denominator will be and rewrite each individual fraction as an equivalent fraction with that least common denominator. We'll combine the numerators and keep the common denominator, and we will simplify to lowest terms if possible. So I'm going to start by finding the least common denominator. So I'm going to write the multiples of 10 and multiples of 5, and I am looking for a common multiple. So if I count by 5s, 5, 10, I see immediately that my least common denominator will be 10. And now I will write each of these fractions as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10. Well, 7/10 is already good to go. And 1/5, if we need a denominator of 10, we will multiply by 2/2. Remember, we have to multiply by 1 so as not to change the value. So we're going to take 7/10 and we're going to subtract 2/10, and I will end up with 5/10, and I will reduce that to 1/2. Next, I have -4/15 minus 1/10. So I will start by counting by 10s and counting by 15s and writing these multiples, looking for the least common multiple. So 15 times 1 is 15, and 15 times 2 is 30, and 10 times 1 is 10, then 20, then 30. So you can see that my least common multiple is 30. So I'm going to change these fractions to equivalent fractions that have a denominator of 30. So first I'm going to multiply by 2/2, giving me -8/30. And then I'm going to multiply this fraction by 3/3, giving me 3/30. So I will have -8/30 minus 3/30, and my answer is -11/30. Now we are going to find common denominators that contain variables. So you will not be able to put this one in your calculator. So my goal is to get common denominators. I need the shoes to match. So if one denominator is 5 and the other is x, I'm going to make my common denominator 5x. Remember that you can only multiply on to a fraction. You can't get rid of anything you've already got. So I'm going to multiply my first fraction by x over x, and then I'm going to multiply my second fraction by 5 over 5. And by doing this, do you see that my denominators match? And that is my goal. So multiplying across the numerators, here I have 4x over 5x plus 3 times 5 is 15 over 5x. So we're going to combine the numerators, 4x plus 15, and keep the common denominator 5x. Now this cannot be reduced. You cannot cancel the x's because they're not factors, they're addends and on the top of this. So that's the final answer. Next, again, I need the denominators to match. So one denominator is x and the other is x squared. So we can only build onto these. And perhaps you can see that if I multiply by x over x, my denominators will match. So my goal is to find the common denominators. What do I have to multiply onto one or both denominators to make them match? And so now I have 7x over x squared minus 3 over x squared. So I combine the numerators, 7x minus 3, and keep the common denominator, x squared. So a new Kelly Safari SUV tire has a 7/16 inch tread. After being driven 50,000 miles, the tread depth has worn down to 7/32. By how much has it worn away? So we're going to be subtracting 7/16 minus 7/32 to find the difference in the tread depth. So I take the original depth minus the final depth and do this subtraction. So my common denominator here is 32. So I have to change both of these, or change the first fraction so that it has a denominator of 32. So 7/16 is now going to be 14/32, and I'll subtract 7/32, and I'm left with 7/32 inches, and that's my tread depth after driving 50,000 miles. And so here we are going to find the perimeter of a parcel of land, and these are the lengths of the sides of this parcel: 1/8 mile, 1/4 mile, 5/12, and 1/3. So we're going to add the lengths of the sides to get the perimeter. And I will find my common denominator is 24. And I will change all of these to 24ths. And I end up with 27/24, which reduces to 9/8 or 1 1/8 miles. And you have some problems here to try.